Democrats are trying to monitor your bank accounts. Now, it says here, this is a story, Epoch Times again, it says Republicans are now pushing back as Yellen defends IRS snooping into bank accounts. Now, why they want to do this, we'll see. I'll tell you what they're saying and why what they're saying doesn't really make sense, but we'll talk about it. Now, it says this. Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen defended the Democrats' plan to allow the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, which I should note is a new agency. Income tax is a new thing, I should note. The IRS is not a traditional American federal branch, but it's expanding, folks, and the Democrats wanted to be able to retrieve Americans' personal information from their banks, a plan Republicans have criticized since news of the proposal became public. Since the introduction of their reconciliation package, Democrats have insisted that the legislation will not add to the debt or the deficit, claiming that all new spending will be paid for. By whom? I don't know, especially as you're eliminating more jobs and people are quitting their jobs in droves. People leaving their jobs is increasing in addition to, again, the vaccine mandates and so on. How are they going to pay for additional services when you've had basically economic shutdowns for over a year now, more people going out of business? Where does the government get its money? The government does not produce money. It gets it from you. And they're putting you out of business through these policies. Where does the money come from then? That's not the issue. Let's get into a bit more. Now, Democrats wrote into the bill a section to allow the IRS to gather Americans' private information from banks, including on any activities totaling more than $600. Now, on CBS, Yellen defended the plan, saying that it has been seriously mischaracterized. How dare they mischaracterize the plan to monitor your accounts and any transactions over $600? According to Yellen, and this is her defending against those claims, right? Some opponents of the measures have criticized the proposal as granting the IRS information on individual transactions totaling $600 or more. That's not the case, Yellen said. Rather, she indicated that the plan has a much larger scope. It's actually bigger than that. If the measure becomes law, the IRS would be able to get all information from bank accounts. All information from bank accounts with more than $600 total activity per year. She was saying okay, so she's saying Republicans are spreading disinformation by saying that they want to monitor transactions over $600. They say that's disinformation. How dare they make false claims? Actually, folks, it's if you spend more than $600 in an entire year, the IRS can monitor not just your transaction, but your personal information tied to your bank. And rather than simply information on individual transactions, it's actually bigger than that. But anyways, they're saying, how dare you lie? Actually, it's a whole lot bigger than what you're saying, but how dare you lie? Now, despite this extremely low threshold of $600 in transactions a year, I don't know, maybe only rich people spend more than $600 a year. Yellen said the measure is designed to target wealthy Americans who hide income from the IRS. Because of the measure, Yellen said the IRS will be able to collect more taxes from the wealthy and close the tax gap. And folks, maybe the way things are heading with inflation and gas costs and probably people becoming unemployed because they don't want to get the vaccine or because they go out of business. Maybe, in fact, having $600 a year transactions, maybe if you have $600 a year, you will be a wealthy American. Maybe that's what they're suggesting here. I think that might be the case because they're saying that if you make transactions of more than $600 a year, that does qualify you as a wealthy American as they're describing it. And so maybe they need to lower the bar on what constitutes wealth in America, where, again, $600 a year transactions would qualify you as the targeted wealthy American. Maybe that's where it's heading. Sorry. A few notes on this, though. You know, if you go back to traditional history, There's actually a Chinese story in this, Chinese and Japanese traditional story. Basically, there was a story where one of the officials in one of these old countries wanted to look at, basically heard that people were embezzling funds, taking money, not paying full taxes on goods. This official says, how dare they make it so that every single transaction is traced. Make it so we can trace every single transaction, make sure there's no embezzlement, no people taking additional money and not paying taxes or whatever. One of the officials interjected in that, in this old traditional story. One of these officials interjected in this, and he quoted Confucius, and he said, fish avoid clear water. In the same way, he said the idea is this, that if you look at a pond of fish, in order to live calmly and happily, fish need to have reeds and things to take cover under. If there's no reeds or plants or anything like that, they don't feel safe, right? They feel they're always being watched. In the same way, people are like that. If they feel that they can't do anything without being monitored or watched, they cannot live calm lives. That's where that saying, fish avoid clear water, comes from. That was a Confucian saying. You can find mentions of that exact example, though, in Way of the Night by Yamaga Soko, which is a very good book, by the way. Anyways, folks, basically that's in reality what it would mean. It pretty much means that every bank account would be monitored, unless you're not spending more than $600 a year, which I assume most people spend over $600 a year. Now, on that note, it's unclear, frankly, what the broader agenda with that is, or why they might want to monitor people to that extent, let alone whether they even have the ability to monitor that much information. The only thing I can think of, and this is purely my analysis at this point, right? The only thing I can think of is I've been talking for a while about the agenda the Chinese Communist Party is putting forward, the agenda for bouncing back from the virus. I mentioned a few stages of this. There were 3 stages to the virus. There was the initial stage, the spreading of the virus, right? During the initial stage spreading of the virus, the Chinese Communist Party restricted travel within China, allowed travel outside of China, put a squeeze on the market for PPE, personal protective equipment, face masks, and otherwise, things for frontline doctors and so on. That was the model for spreading the virus, right? The CCP restricted it, made sure countries didn't have the proper gear to protect their staff, made sure it spread, and made sure that people weren't able to protect themselves against it as it spread. That was first stage. The second stage was dealing with the virus. Mask mandates, lockdowns, economic shutdowns. That was the Chinese Communist Party's model that was promoted by the World Health Organization, lying to the world on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party, claiming that that was a functioning way of doing things. Other countries adopted that based on recommendations of the World Health Organization, based on the World Health Organization's belief, based on Chinese disinformation, that those were functioning policies in China. The CCP lied to the world through the WHO, which could not demonstrate its independence from the CCP under the Trump administration, which is why Trump pulled us out of it. Biden put us back in. That was Model 2, dealing with the virus, the shutdowns, the destruction of global economies, and so on. We're now at stage 3, folks, and stage 3 is the bouncing back and recovering from the virus. And what does that include? That includes vaccine passports, which I've been talking about for a while. It includes the new model of state socialism, or capitalism. They call it state capitalism, which is socialism. And it includes the monitoring of all transactions using new digital currencies. That is stage 3. In China, this is what they're doing already. Now, briefly on this, one of those, remember the health codes, the health codes on your smartphone. That was the Chinese Communist Party's model. That was their way of determining who could pass around in China, who could move in China. You had a code on your phone that demonstrated whether you were free or not free, based on whether you were getting your vaccines or, tests or whatever. That was part of it. That became the model for the vaccine passports. That was the China model. Stage 2 is what they call these new digital currencies. In China, they have the digital yuan. Through the CCP, promoting it through their central bank, they're going to every centralized bank in the world, and they're promoting these. They call them CBDCs, centralized banking digital currencies. These are kind of like cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, only the total opposite technically, because while Bitcoin is anonymous, while payments on it are anonymous, while it keeps your identity private, these are directly tied to your identity. It means that every single transaction you make, everything you do is monitored, and your transactions can be approved or denied by the state. It seems to be the case that this program the IRS is trying to put into place right now, the Democrats try to put in through the IRS, would do something similar. It allows the state to monitor every single transaction. I've been saying it for months now. This is the CCP's model. I've been saying watch for it because they're going to be doing this. It does look like it, right? Stage 3 to watch out for is going to be state capitalism, which is the fancy word for socialism. That comes from Lenin, actually. Shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin wrote a paper saying, how can we advance to communism if we fear the stage of socialism? And he described socialism as the state capitalist monopoly. In other words, the state has a monopoly over the capitalist systems, meaning businesses and so on. Everything is under the state socialism. That's how he described socialism, the state capitalist monopoly. And state capitalism is the buzzword that different publications like New York Times have been using to praise the Communist Party's model. Now, as businesses shut down, as economies get shut down and so on, you're going to watch for this, because I'll tell you how it's happening in China. And I'll get into questions just a bit. And I'm going a bit over on this part. We'll go into questions just a bit. So if you do have questions, leave them in the chat. I'll get to that in just a minute. But I want to tell you real quick how this is happening in China, because this is what you need to watch for. In China, Xi Jinping is rolling out this new economic policy. Part of that is what they call a mixed model economy. They're attacking all the big businesses, all the billionaires in China and so on. They're going after them. They're purging them. Individuals like Jack Ma and so on, the head of Alibaba, they're getting purged. They're getting kicked out. They're getting removed from their businesses. The state is stepping in. And as part of that as well, the state will partially control every single business, from the biggest business in the country down to your local hot dog stand. Now, we haven't seen signs of them doing this yet in the United States or other countries. The CCP is going to be promoting this as its model. But what's going to happen, folks, if businesses shut down? In New York, for example, 40 to 60% of business has been lost. Now, restaurants, right? You think of how a lot of them have already shut down because of the lockdowns. Now they put in these vaccine mandates where they can't allow customers to do indoor dining if they don't have the vaccine. Based on reporting we've done at Epic Times, restaurants are already reporting 40 to 60% revenue loss based on that alone. What's going to happen if businesses go out of business? What's going to happen with these economic shutdowns again as they move them forward? What's going to happen as businesses lose employees who choose to not get vaccinated? What's going to happen when businesses can't get supplies to stock their shelves with because of the shipping crisis? They're probably going to go out of business. And how does the government help the country build back better from a collapsed economic system? Well, maybe the government needs to intervene somehow in the capitalist systems. Maybe a state monopoly of some kind of state capitalist monopoly where they help us to build back better. Just a thought. We'll see how it plays out, folks, but this is the CCP's model. This is what they're promoting.